So this is a brand new course. It's the first one that we're doing in a series of 6 weeks. And this course is called Networking and Business Soft Skills in English, because of course, all of these trainings are in English. I think we have a slide next, which is introduction. So I'll change it. This is me. Always, I have to find a picture where I look slightly less sort of photogenic, because you can see the picture and then you see the real person in the real lighting in a real life. So you can see, 2 different ways that Ariella Knight will look. I am the founder and CEO of the American Institute. So this is an English school and cultural center that I founded here in Algiers in 2020, but I've actually been living in Algeria since 2018. So I am an English teacher and now business owner. I am American and I'm originally from Boston. And for those who I haven't met yet or I haven't taught yet, you are most welcome here. All right, so this is the overview of this latest course. So for those who aren't familiar, we are doing, in partnership with the US Embassy Algiers, a series of 5 online courses. So the first online course we did was all about applying to jobs in English. The next one was all about passing the TOEFL exam, which is a standardized English test. And so you can see the topics are all quite different. This one is all about business soft skills. So yes, it will be a language-focused program because everything is about English work environments and using the English language as a professional. But I'm excited about this course because it also will have a few other learning opportunities, not just language, but I would put them broadly in the box of culture. When we're talking about using business English, we're talking about a very specific context, which are professional environments. And in those environments, the words that we're using are not the only things that are different. It's also different expectations when you're in an English speaking office environment. So we're going to have a few topics here that touch on different elements. You'll see that we have introductions, partnerships, making requests, conflict negotiation. We're going to add another one about leadership. So ultimately, I'm really excited for the program, and I'm excited to be with you every Wednesday night from tonight through June 9th. So as I said, the topic of this entire course is business soft skills and networking. So today is an introduction, kind of what is business English, what are the contexts in which I can use it, and then we'll spend the second half of the class talking about networking. Hossein is saying the 8th of May, did it happen? Oh, maybe we have the wrong dates. Okay, we have actually we have all the wrong dates because today's the 15th. All right, ignore the dates in here. The next week we'll have the correct dates up, but this class will be meeting every Wednesday. So we have the 15th today. We'll be meeting the 22nd, the 29th, the 5th, the 12th, and the 19th. So actually we'll be together until June 19th. Yes, the dates are not correct. Thank you, Hussein, for noticing. Apologies. So just focus on what I'm saying, not the dates in front of you. We will be here every Wednesday. Also, the Zoom that you signed up in, you signed up they will send you an email the day before the class, either the day before or the hour before, so you'll have a reminder. So the Zoom is correct, and this I know for sure. All right, thank you, good catch. So today is the introduction to networking and business English. So we're going to talk about business English, business soft skills, and what is networking. What do we mean when we talk about business English? I want you to tell me. What do you think we're talking about? When you see the little symbols of the keyboard, it means I want you to chat. Type me something in the chat. What is business English? Okay, Bushra says advanced English. Yes, in general, business English is English that has to happen at an intermediate, advanced intermediate level at the minimum. Great. Abla says something related to work. Okay, I need interview vocabulary. Cool. I have formal English, communication skills. It means the proper way to talk in businesses, says Kareem. English for professional use. I see some guesses. Is it about working from home? Is it about economic words, economic vocabulary? I see English that's used with specific vocab, English related to business, communication, networking. Very cool. So business English is a pretty broad term. And I think what I see in the chat is that you all have already a sense of what it means. Generally speaking, business English is just what we call English that we use in the workplace. It's workplace English. It can also be English that we use in any kind of professional setting, a conference, a work event, an after work, right? Where you're mingling and talking. So it's not explicitly a work event, but you're with other professionals. It can be meetings, it can be seminars or trainings, okay? It's in these types of environments, we tend to use a different kind of English, and we call that English business English. Here are the three main differences when someone says to you, are you comfortable in business English? Or if someone asks you, what are the main differences between business English and regular English? There are three main differences, and we're talking differences in terms of linguistically. What are you doing differently when you're producing this language? So whether that's, I should clarify, producing that language spoken or written. Business English is also written language as well as spoken. Number one, business English is more formal than general English. Number two, it is more indirect. You could also say it's less direct. I realize that I've added an extra step there, but you could think of it as a pun, right? It's a more indirect way to say less direct. If there's any pun nerds in here to appreciate that joke. Anyways, business English is more indirect than general English. It is also more reliant on questions and modifiers. So questions, meaning we often rely heavily on question format in a business English setting, and modifiers, meaning things like a bit, sort of, kind of, somewhat. We modify, we weaken what we mean. I'm somewhat tired, as opposed to I'm tired. This is this is part of being indirect, are the use of questions and modifiers, okay? But I wanted to put those there explicitly so that you know what I mean. When I say formal, people have a pretty strong idea of what formal means, right? Fancier vocabulary, different posture, different tone of voice, shaking hands, maybe different facial expressions, less slang, less abbreviations, less kind of internet talk, if that's something that's made its way into your general English vocabulary. For indirect, the best way to think of it is that you're relying more on questions and you're adding a lot of modifiers. All right, so now I want you to try. I know I haven't gone over everything about business English yet, but I still want to see what you imagine, or maybe you've had exposure to business English. I want you to tell me, how do you think you would say, let's meet up in business English? So let's meet up, meaning let's get together, let's hang out, let's have a meeting, let's connect, let's have lunch. Let's meet up is a really casual way to say this. And you would never hear this in a business setting. So tell me, how would you say the same thing? How would you express this same idea in business English? Just give it a shot, even if you're not sure. I just want to see what you say. Okay, I have, let's have a chat. Let us hold a meeting, question mark. We have a meeting, question mark. Would we meet later? Let's arrange a meeting. Someone says catch up. Maybe that's not formal enough. Let's schedule a meeting. Please join us. Let's have a chat. Can I suggest a meeting with you? Good, I see you relying on questions, okay. Let's start up. I think is not gonna mean the same thing as let's meet up. Nordine, would you mind if we could meet up? I like this one. Would you mind if we could meet up? Can we arrange a professional meeting? Kaltum, you're asking, should this be a question or an order? It can be either. It can be either. I don't mind if it's a question. I don't mind if it's a statement. I want it to have the same intention. When we say let's meet up to someone, it's a suggestion. right? If I met you in the street and I said, hey, Amina, let's meet up later today. What do you think? I'm proposing something. So you can propose something with a question, or you can propose something with a statement. I would really like to connect. Oops, maybe I'm giving away what's on the next slide. All right, I was wondering if time is saved by you to discuss. Could we have a meeting? How about we meet up today? All right, great. Here are the three options I have given you for a business English way to say, let's meet up. Are you free to discuss further? Are you free to discuss further? This implies that I'm already talking to someone, and maybe we were just passing by and we start having a discussion, and I want to propose a time to meet and continue the discussion. But rather than saying, can we meet, which is quite direct, we want to be indirect. So I'll just ask about this person's schedule. Are you free to discuss further? Next I have, I'd love to find a time to connect. This is again quite indirect speech. Instead of, can we find a time to connect? I'm stating, I'd love, as if I'm just sharing my emotions with you. You know, I'd love it if we could find a time to meet up. All right. Good. Next. Would you be open to a meeting? Would you be open to a meeting? You're also going to rely heavily on modal communication. Would, could, should, might, may. These are words that you're going to find very commonly in business English. All right. Lena is asking, is it a must to be indirect? Well, if you want to speak business English fluently, then you need to understand when to be indirect and when to be direct. I will explain it this way. Directness is related to hierarchy. So your supervisor or your boss will be direct with you. It's a demonstration of power. But you, as the employee, do not have the same ability to be direct back. An example of this in the same context about let's meet up. Maybe your supervisor says to you, my office, 5 minutes, walks away. Could you imagine saying back to your supervisor, hey boss, my office, 5 minutes? Absolutely not. So there is a place for directness in business English, but it communicates hierarchy. I'll give you an example in an email communication. I worked at a job where my boss would sign off every email with his initials. Okay, so let's say BL. So every message would end with thanks, comma, BL. I, as the employee, would never send an email back with my initials. Initials is really casual. It demonstrates I don't have time for you. It's a way of saying I have so many emails to send, I can't even write my own name. So as the lower down in the hierarchy, I don't have the right to communicate that to my supervisor, even if it's just with something as small as my sign off. I don't need to share with my supervisor, oh, I have no time for you. So directness and formality are always related to hierarchy in a business setting. Now, in a case that you're non-hierarchical, so let's say you're talking to your colleagues at the same level, you're talking to your peers, you can be more direct with them than you would with your supervisor. But in general, in a business context, you're always less direct than in regular life. So I would never really say, let's meet up in a business context, unless I knew someone really well and maybe I had a relationship with them outside of work where they were a friend or someone that I've had casual or personal conversations with. Then sure, I can say, yeah, let's meet up later and talk about this project. Otherwise, it's not something that you would hear very commonly. Okay. All right, next one. How would you say, I didn't get it in business English? How would you say, I didn't get it in business English? The dog has arrived, if you hear the noises. I didn't get it, meaning I didn't understand. I didn't understand something, but I didn't get it is really casual speech, and that is not appropriate. So what would you say in a business setting? And I will return. I'm just going to move the dog. She loves learning about business English. This is what happens. She has to sit right next to me. All right, in the chat, I have Can you demonstrate more? Do you mind explaining it to me? I beg your pardon. Can you please repeat? Can you be more specific? Can you explain? Could you be specific? Could you explain more? Good. I prefer could over can. Perfect. Could is more polite. When we're using a modal verb, it indicates higher politeness. Could you come again? Okay. Would you mind re-explaining, please? Could you elaborate? Could you clarify? Great. Mohammed's asking may over could, equally fine, equally fine. All right, here's what I said. I didn't quite catch that. This is a classically very polite way to communicate. I haven't understood you. I didn't quite catch that. You'll notice that it's not a question. I'm not asking you to repeat yourself. And it's interesting because I told you before that business English relies heavily on questions, and it does. But usually the questions in business English are indicating requests or even orders. Like, for example, are you sure we're supposed to meet at 10? That's my way of telling you, you have the meeting time wrong. Okay, that's not my way of actually asking a question. So we're using a question for a non-question. In this example, it's the opposite. We're using a statement to say something, to say something that's normally a question. Normally we ask, can you repeat? Okay, but actually a more polite and a more fluent way of saying that in business English is, I didn't quite catch that. All right, good. The dog wants to be noisy. Okay, next we have, could you explain that one more time, please? So I'm happy that I have these examples in the chat where folks were sending me, could you be more clear? Could you repeat? Could you elaborate? Those are 3 words. Could you elaborate? Could you repeat? Could you be more clear? We have 4 words. You'll notice that the sentence that I put on the board has, could you explain that one more time, please? We're using 8 words to say the same thing that we could say in 3 words. And that is classic for business English. You're going to find that your phrases get longer, get more complicated. You might say, Ariella, they're unnecessarily complicated. This is something that's really typical in a business English setting. And so if you want to feel more comfortable, sound more fluent, and blend in better, you will also start using longer phrases when you're at a networking event or when you're writing emails to colleagues in English. The last one I have is very similar to the first one. I didn't quite catch that. This one is, I'm afraid I haven't quite understood. So the reason I have this one here, in addition to the first, is to demonstrate the use of I'm afraid. I'm afraid I haven't quite understood. I actually don't have any fear. There's no fear in this moment. I'm not actually experiencing fear. I'm not in a panic. I'm not stressed. It's a polite way to demonstrate that I'm almost apologetic, that I need to ask for a repetition. Oh, I'm afraid I haven't quite understood. All right. You can also use this in simple past. I'm afraid I didn't quite understand. That's also fine. And you'll see in both examples, I'm using the word quite as my modifier. All right. I see a lot of you using very, very polite English in the chat, asking, please, can you repeat? Please, can you explain more? Please. That is wonderful. It's very important to be polite, but those sentences are not very fluent in a business setting. If you're saying, can you repeat, please, in a business setting, it really sounds like you have a low level of English. Whereas if you're in a normal setting, let's say you're buying a coffee and you don't understand the person at the store, you say, sorry, could you repeat? Totally normal. In a workplace setting, it sounds really odd. It's too simple. It's too direct. It really sounds out of context. I recommend that you start to replace these basic short sentences with more complex, longer and elaborate sentences in a business setting. Great. Hussein is saying that my sentence, I'm afraid I haven't quite understood, is similar to the expression, I'm afraid I can't join you. Very good. So we could keep going with this, and maybe I'll add these into every presentation, sort of translation, like translate this into business English. the one who's seen is giving as an example is a translation of a rejection. If someone's not able to come to something, instead of saying, I can't come, they would say, I'm afraid I won't be able to join. If it helps you, and if you're someone who watches Netflix, you can think of these sort of like Bridgerton or Downton Abbey or one of these kind of British shows, because business English, in fact, relies more on, well, I should say it's not business English, it's formal English. When we talk about formal English, it's more closely connected to how British individuals still speak, because Americans have kind of, I was going to say downgraded English in formality, but I don't want to denigrate my own people. It's just that Americans use more regularly an informal English than Brits. Cool. All right, thank you for participating. Now let's go through a few slides about business English in general. So let's see a few key places where we use business English. So video conferencing. Something not like this. Right now I'm teaching you, so I'm not using business English. I'm using regular general English to get my idea across. But if we were video conferencing about something related to work, if I was on a video call with you about, I don't know, launching a new online course and we were like hammering out a schedule, I would be using business English with you. Meetings, so in-person meetings, online meetings. I'm sorry if you hear the dog. I may have to take a second to kick her out, but I think for now we're still okay. Meetings, we have reports. So now we're also talking with emails and reports, we're talking written English, okay? So as I said in the beginning, business English is not only about spoken English in terms of the office place, the environment, the discussions, it's also about written English. Office discussions, so how you speak with your coworkers, how you speak with your supervisor. That includes things like saying good morning and how are you? And when you leave at the end of the day, oh, great, I hope you have a nice day. Business English is all of these things. Newsletters and professional social media posts. So I didn't say LinkedIn posts only, because nowadays professional social media can be more than just LinkedIn. A lot of people are using their Facebook, Instagram, sometimes TikTok. I would say maybe it's not likely that TikTok is using business English, but I'm ready to be proven wrong. I'm sure you can find a creator on TikTok who's using business English. But largely when we say professional social media, we're talking LinkedIn. And so when you're posting updates on your LinkedIn, those updates should be in business English, where you're using more formal vocabulary, longer sentences, more complex grammatical structures to talk about your updates in your professional life. Newsletters, this is in the case that maybe your office or your company, or you, if you're self-employed, produces some kind of regular communication for your clients to read in the form of a newsletter. Next, presentations. So again, that's kind of like webinars, video, anything like that, as well as in-person presentations. Now that we're in a post-COVID world, research, conferences, and seminars are coming back, or are maybe fully back, in which case you might find yourself giving a presentation. There's another common setting you might find yourself giving a presentation, and that is during a sales meeting. So if you are pitching someone, you want them to buy your product, you will bring your computer, or you'll bring a flash disk, you'll put the PowerPoint up, and you'll be explaining in business English, and your presentation will be written in business English. And this includes even if you're kind of working in a cool industry, like a tech startup, or maybe you're a content creator, there's still an expectation that in a business environment, you're using slightly different language. And then advertisements, which, I mean, this can go in both directions. I don't know, you have to tell me if you're here and you're in advertising and you're thinking of what language to put in advertisements, because sometimes the language we use is more general or slang, depending on the audience. All right, so that one's half-half. Of course, we use it when we're networking, and this is going to be the focus of today's lesson about how we can use business English and business soft skills in networking environments. So this is the biggest setting where you'll be using your business English. Not biggest setting, I should say, but I should say, I want this to be one of your focuses about how you can impress other people and present yourself well using business English. So what is the main difference? Like when we talk about business English, is it the same as business French? Is it the same as business Arabic, business Chinese, business Russian? Kind of why is there something so special for business English? Is there a main difference between the business languages? Well, ironically enough, oh, actually, why don't you tell me? You can take a hint from where I said ironically enough, or you can ignore that. But tell me in the chat, what do you think is the difference? So business French versus business English. Is it the same? Same level of formality, same amount of directness, same use of, avoiding jargon, avoiding slang, or are there some differences? You can also use business Arabic, which I have to admit I know less about the business culture, the Arabic language business culture, but I'd love to know about it. All right, people think it's largely the same. Ramesa thinks French is more formal. Maybe Abdulhaq is saying maybe there are some cultural differences. I think, yeah, if there's one thing I'd like for you to take away from this course and the other ones that I do with you on soft skills, which is that culture is really present. When we talk language, we cannot separate it from culture. Okay, the main difference is the language. Fatima says French is more classy. I think a lot of us feel like French has the sophistication down, and business English is not necessarily known for being sophisticated. Not that that's a criticism, but we're not necessarily known for that. It's easier to make mistakes in French, someone says. Asma thinks British English is classier than French or classier than American English. That's a hard one. I think as an American, we tend to think all European languages sound very classy. Mohammed says French is more formal and Arabic has to be standard. Okay, so we're talking about Fusha. Like in a business context, you'll be using Fusha. Interesting. Okay, very cool. So here are the main differences. So we're talking about vocabulary and use of jargon. So in business English, of course, in any language, you're going to have different vocabulary. Well, okay, I shouldn't say in any language because I don't know every language. In most languages, you have some context-specific vocabulary. So you only use certain words in certain settings. That's the case for business English. What is unique, I would say, about English is the type of additional vocabulary is very technical sounding. It sounds sometimes like we're talking from a computer manual or, how to operate a machine, because we are using abbreviations. We're just using professional abbreviations. So you can see CEO. Does anyone know what CEO stands for? Let's see who can put it in the chat first. CEO. It's an acronym. What are the three letters stand for? Here we go, Abdullah, Chief Executive Officer. Yes, so the CEO is an acronym for the Chief Executive Officer. As Yusuf put, it means the boss. Good. What about COO? You might have seen that word and you wanted to read coup. That would be wrong. This is an acronym, COO. What does it mean? Who knows? Who knows or who can Google it fastest? Chief, Asma got it. Chief Operating Officer, exactly. So the COO is in charge of the operations of a company, usually things like finance, administration, human resources, logistics, maybe building management, all of this. And CEO is in charge of strategy, projections, sales, things related if there's a board of directors, external relations. Awesome. And there's more than this. Nowadays, if you're looking at a startup, you'll see something called a CTO. Can you imagine? If you've never heard of it, what do you think a CTO is? And then Yusuf, I'll answer your question about how do they relate. I just want to see if anyone has heard of this, CTO. Who's seen guesses technical? Yeah, anyone else? Well, okay, technically who's seen, you're correct. So technically, you're correct about technical. So I won't make others search. CTO can be the Chief Technical Officer. And so nowadays, as we're seeing more and more startups that are relying heavily on technology, they have whole teams of software engineers That needs, the question of who should supervise the software engineers all the way at the top. They're now creating a position called CTO. Someone asked me, I believe it was Yusuf, how do these relate? So actually, these two positions don't have hierarchy. They are both the main managers of the company, usually. The CEO is usually not working for the CEO. Wait, the CEO is always at the top, but the COO is not an employee of the CEO in most cases. Usually they are equivalent. Same with the CTO. It's like a team that are managing different things. Okay. Mohammed is asking, is the founder of the company always its CEO? Not necessarily, not necessarily. Usually when a company is first founded, that first CEO will be the founder. So the person who starts the company is also in charge of the company. Usually they'll say CEO. I mean, like myself, I'm the CEO of the American Institute. I founded the American Institute. But in the beginning, I was the CEO. I was also the only teacher. I was the admin assistant. I was the sales manager. I was the hiring officer, right? You're wearing so many hats when you start a business because you have to hire everyone. That CEO is only one of those titles. Whereas now, 4 years down the line, I'm happy to say I'm CEO and I'm not a million other things. Cool. So back to the jargon. So what sets business English apart is that it is more jargony. When I say jargon, I mean technical language. It has more technical language than other business languages, which I should also add is starting to change. I mean, business English and the entrepreneurship environment and startups are starting to infect. I want to say infect, even though it sounds slightly negative, but it is this sort of spread of language that is reaching beyond English. So even in French, I have heard some English terms make its way into business settings or business jargon. Streamlining. Who knows what streamlining means? Who can give me a synonym of streamlining in the chat? If someone says, can we streamline these processes? Give me your best guess, because this is a hard vocab word. I've actually explained this vocab word in many advanced English classes, because people will hear it, they will encounter it, they will see it in TV shows, and then they'll come to me as their teacher and say, I actually don't understand. What are we streamlining? All right, I have arrange, I have simplify, going to the point, structure. All right, streamlining, the way I like to explain it, it's almost like getting a lot of things in a position that they're more efficient. So we have, let's say, I need to think of an example. So I run an English school. Let's say we have, well, no, I don't want to use physical example. Let's say, okay, in any type of business where you sell something, let's say you have 3 different people who sell the products and they're all selling all the products. So anytime you come in, you might talk to any of them. You can imagine you're working in like a marketing agency and they might ask about marketing services. Maybe they want to know if you can write a brochure for them. They want to know if you can help write language for their website. And so everyone who works on sales is responsible for knowing about all of these products, which means that there's some gaps. The person who's really good on websites is not really good on brochures, etc. So maybe I gather my team in front of me and I say, let's streamline. One person for one product. I'm going to take a process and I'm going to make it more efficient. That is what we mean when we say streamline. The reason I think it's confusing as a word is because it has this visual. And I will tell you the visual is actually from, I looked this up recently, from oil. It was about creating the most efficient path in an oil refinery. What do we call somewhere that oil comes from? You'll have to help me. But in the pipes, like the most effective way to get the oil into where it was going, we called that streamlining. And we adopted that language in the abstract in the office place. So yeah, making an organization more efficient through employing faster or simpler methods. Yeah, Mohammed, great. Perfect. giving a specific task to one person for efficiency. So Hussein, I don't want you to get the impression that the example I gave is the only definition of streamlining. It's not always giving one person a task for efficiency. The important takeaway is it is changing a process to make it more efficient. In the example I provided, having one person do one discrete task was more efficient. There may be other examples where it's completely the opposite. All right, it's about simplifying and making things more efficient. Great. So Yusuf is asking, is it considered a business English term when we say streamlining? Exactly. Streamlining is only business English. You cannot use this in your personal life. It will sound strange and odd and too technical. These are only business English terms. All right, the next one is ROI. This is another acronym. Return on investment. You were ready. You guys were ready. Mohammed and Haneen and Kareem. Nice work. Return on investment. Who can explain? What is return on investment? Send me something in the chat. Okay, ROI stands for return on investment. It's easy to see that those are the letters. But can you describe what that means? All right, Kamala saying profit. Nice. A pretty simple way. Hussein says benefits. Nordine, benefits. Cool. Haneen is saying you used to evaluate how well an investment has performed. Yeah. I mean, that's a very direct way to say it. If you want to look at an actual investment, like in the stock market, you see how much you made, the money you earn after you invest. Cool. I want to see, just in case not everyone here is going to invest in the stock market, I want to look at the abstract meaning, or not abstract, but not just in the stock market. So it's true, ROI comes from the stock market, where you would say, I'm going to buy a share of Google and the share is $10. And I buy my share and a week later, the share is $12. So my return on investment is $2. I put in 10, I'm going to get back 12. So my ROI is 2. So you could also call it the margin in this example. But the broader way to think about ROI is it worth the effort you put in? The effort you put into something, do you get more out than you put in? So we can talk about investment in terms of starting a business, like you have to rent a location. You have to invest in the materials, in the tables, in the chairs, in the technology. You have to invest time. In my example, time is also an investment. You're investing your time into hiring, into training a team, into all of the legal paperwork that goes into starting and running a business. So a year from now, you want to see, was it worth it? How much money did I make? Did I make more money than I spent? In addition to that, the money that I made, was it worth my time and my energy? Running a business is not easy. I can tell you that I can't tell you the number of times I have cried while running my business. Your business becomes your baby that you are totally devoted to. So the energy you put in is a lot. And you need to look down the road and say, is it worth it? Did I get what I wanted? Am I satisfied? Do I have a sense of accomplishment? Am I making money out of it? Whatever your measure is, you're returning your own investment into something. So I see the questions here. Lena saying, can we say the same as net profit? So in the most simple examples, sure, you can. But in my example, you'll see it's not just about the money. It's about my energy and my time and my emotional well-being. And that's a lot of times how we use ROI these days. We've taken it from a financial world and expanded it. Mohammed is saying, can we say the benefits? Sure, we can say the benefits, but we're talking about benefits in an example where you have put in an investment. So the benefits after you've invested your time, your money, your energy, your hopes, your dreams, then yes, what are the benefits that come out of it as a comparison? You're comparing the benefits to that. Great. Benchmarking. What does benchmarking mean? Oh, Yusra was ready. We had already typed it in and you were ready. Well, you're first. Good job, Yusra. Arslan, close second. Let's see what you sent me. Yusra, benchmarking is a process that involves measuring the performance of your business against a competitor in the same market. Beautiful. Arslan, benchmarking is measuring the company's performance. Good. So when you benchmark, again, this is just to remind us all what we're doing here. We're talking about how business English has uniquely technical vocabulary, and we're going over some keywords. So benchmarking is when you compare your business to someone else's, against your competitor. You measure performance, and you often also usually measure pricing. So you can benchmark your pricing. Am I pricing my product or my service too high compared to my competitors, too low? And then you look at their profit, or, you have to have some data, right? Sometimes we don't know how much money our competitors are making, but we can assess maybe their reviews on Google or their reviews on Facebook or anything they publish about their results. It's just a way of saying we compare against our competitors. Great. And then executive board. So I actually earlier used a different term for this when we were talking about CEO. I said the CEO reports to a board of directors. Board of directors and executive board are exactly the same thing. So what is the executive board? All right, thank you, Haneen. It is a group of company executives who meet to discuss important issues related to the organization. Mahdi says they support business goals and objectives. Thank you to both of you. Perfect. So at big companies, especially public companies, what you will see are, or I should say companies that are publicly traded. So they're on the stock market, not government companies. So when I say public, I mean publicly traded companies like Google, like Meta, like any major giant company you can think of, Amazon. These are parts of the company are owned, right, by people who buy stocks. Like if I buy a share of Google, technically I own a really, really, really small part of Google. I am a part owner, and they have a ton of people who are owning these shares. So it can no longer be a private company of one CEO or one private individual. So what they do is they have a rotating board. These are often it's 12, maybe maximum 20 individuals who help make strategic decisions for the company, representing all these thousands of shareholders. I know it's maybe a little bit abstract because there's not so many publicly traded companies in Algeria, but I also am hoping that some of you have seen Succession, the TV show, and you will know that the Roys, Logan Roy and his sons, they are competing to get the board's approval, because the board, the executive board of the company, actually has the power to fire the CEO, even if the CEO is the founder. So the executive board in a company has the most control of anyone, but not every company has an executive board. Awesome. Hani is saying, can you re-explain benchmarking? Benchmarking is just the process of comparing yourself to your competition on a specific data point. So if I benchmark myself on prices, let's say I'm selling clothing, I'm selling shirts, and I'm opening a new store in, I'll say Bab-el-Oued. Okay, I'm opening my new store in Bab-el-Oued, and I want to know, how much should I sell my shirts for? What's a good price? So benchmarking is just measuring your competition and how much they charge. And you decide, okay, I'm going to charge at the higher end. I have all the prices. I'm going to charge at the higher end because I have really nice quality. I have better quality. So you're benchmarking against your competition. It's a term that's really just about evaluating your competition and understanding where you are in relation to them. It can also be about results. So in the world where you know the results, let's say your competition made $1 million one year and you only made 800,000, then you know that they're more profitable than you. Okay. All right. Mohammed, I see that you have seen Succession. Yeah, they did try to do a board coup, a coup of the board, like the French word coup. I'm going to put it in here so you can see. This is what happens when they kick out the director. Yusuf is saying, isn't the executive board just people that invest money? Yeah, usually to get on the board of a company, you need to be very wealthy. They are very, very valuable positions. People fight over them. They want to be on them. You usually get on them if you are a big investor, you have a lot of money, or you are somehow connected with the founder of the company, who usually composes the board. Okay. Abdul Haq is saying, I didn't understand streamlining. So streamlining, we'll say, is making some process more efficient. That's the most direct way to say it. I gave a long, chatty example, but we're just going to say streamlining, making a process more efficient. And usually we also suggest that also means simpler, simplifying something for more efficiency. Great. And Iman, can you explain the last one, please? Wow, I guess I'm not explaining very well tonight, but I'm happy you're telling me what you don't understand. An executive board is the leadership of a publicly traded company. So we have, once a company enters the stock market, they need to have a board of directors because these directors are representing all the people who own shares in the company. If you're going to tell me like, Ariella, what is the stock market? I'm not comfortable talking about stock market. This is just like washing over me. The most important thing you need to know is the executive board are the leaders, the elected leaders of a company, and they have the ability to fire the CEO. Mohammed is asking, is money the only standard to conduct benchmarking? No, you can benchmark in terms of marketing. So you can say, actually we, at American Institute, we're very proud of our marketing because we do a lot of funny videos, and other schools will contact us and say, we noticed your videos and we see how many views they get. And so we've started like following a similar strategy. It's really just a way of saying you're evaluating your competition in order to understand where you are in the market and then make better decisions. So that could be about money. It's the easiest data to gather is usually money. That's why it's so common, because you can easily see their prices are more expensive than my prices. Research done. But if you have access to other data, you can use it. So you can see their sales strategy. You can see their marketing strategy. Sometimes people will call this corporate espionage, when you pretend to be someone who's shopping in the store just to hear what they say, but you might be gathering data for benchmarking. Yeah. I think that's about it. Cool. All right, next. So just to remind you where we are, we're talking about what makes business English unique that is not similar in other languages. So business French is not known for being jargony the same way business English is. And I imagine it's the same in many languages. Directness and informality. So this again, we're going to talk about. So this, wait. Informality. This is the funny one. Yes. So as you remember at the beginning of the presentation, I told you that business English is more formal and more direct. But when you compare business English to other languages, it is still considered direct and informal. So if you have a room, well, I'll just read the slide to you first. Business English is more direct than other cultures, but it's still less direct than regular English. So when you, let's say, have an American businessman in a room meeting a business person from another culture, they will feel like the American businessman is impolite. I mean, often they will tell you they're impolite. They only care about money. They don't have any shame. And part of this interpretation comes from the fact that talking directly about money in a lot of cultures is considered rude. And so in business meetings, people will leave the money question for the very, very, very end. We sort of dance around it. We don't want to bring it up. And then right before the meeting ends, do you have an idea how much? And in business English, we can be transactional. So we don't consider it impolite. Culturally, it's perfectly normal for us, but we will bring up things like money, like our bottom line, telling someone, listen, I need X, Y, and Z, or this partnership isn't worth it for me. Like, I don't want to sit through a full meeting if we're not agreeing on the basics. I was going to say in American culture, I realize I've been saying American and business English interchangeably, but this is also true in British culture, if slightly less strong than in American culture. Other people will interpret this as brash. In business French, you'll see like kindly, I'm doing the translation, kindly, dear sirs, accept my most esteemed appreciation. We're not talking like that in business English. We are saying things like, please find attached the latest version. It's more formal than spoken English. In spoken English, you probably wouldn't even say please, but it is still less formal than other cultures. So I just want you to be aware of that. I don't want you to walk out of here saying, well, Ariella told me that business English is super formal. Yes, it's super formal for English, but English itself is a very informal language. And so even when you're speaking business English, you might have to tone down your formality. If the language background you come from has you really, really elevated and speaking like the king, you might not find that that works in a business English setting. So this is my main point here is for English, it's formal. For English, it's indirect. Compared to other languages, it's a very direct business culture and a very informal business culture. All right, here's an example of a direct message. We're talking from a written and a spoken standpoint. I hope this message, this is an email example. I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing to request a meeting to discuss our quarterly sales performance. Would you be available for a meeting on either Thursday, May 10th or Friday, May 11th? Please let me know your availability and I will arrange the meeting accordingly. In your opinion, is this message, well, I guess I'll just ask, what do you think about this? Does this message, what do you notice? Does it feel polite? Does it feel formal? Does it feel impolite? Does it feel abrupt? Does it feel assuming? What do you feel when you read this message? Mom is saying, shout out to ChatGPT. This is not ChatGPT. This is a very normal sentence or email that I would absolutely write. We have to remember ChatGPT learned from our sentences on the website. I see polite, I see normal, I see short and effective, quite polite. Someone said it sounds formal and friendly, polite and professional. So Bushra's asking, is it okay if greetings are not used? Thank you for pointing that out, Bushra. This is not a complete email. So there is, greetings are required, sign-offs are required, as well as a sign-off word like thank you or best regards. This is not a full email. So yes, greetings have to be used. Awesome. So you can see that this is what we would consider as an English speaker, we would consider this formal, not crazy formal, but we rarely go to crazy formal. Like this is formal, it's professional and it's polite. But I wanted you to see exactly what we're talking about to understand why in other cultural, through the lens, right? If you're wearing glasses of another culture, this message is not super, first of all, we don't offer a long, polite introduction. I hope you and your family are fine and in good health and that you've been enjoying the weather. No, we have one sentence at the beginning. I hope this message finds you well. That is a standard message. I put it in all of my emails. I recommend you put it in all of your emails. It's kind of like an expected templated sentence, but it's also quite short. There's no details in it. When I receive messages from non-English speakers, they oftentimes try to expand on this sentence, like they feel uncomfortable. So they'll sort of add, things about health and happiness and holidays, and it's really unnecessary. It's not something we expect. And then otherwise it goes directly to the point of the meeting. Smain is asking, should we include the signature? Yes. Yes, this is not a complete email. A complete email will include a signature. All right, let us continue. Both for written and oral communication, the message should be direct and straight to the point, but it doesn't mean it's okay to be rude. You can be direct and polite, just to quickly clarify. So what are the don'ts? What do we avoid in business English? So number one, we don't commonly discuss our personal life. I think this is true in a lot of business cultures, but some others really go into personal life and talking about especially family or things that are challenging. We actually have a little bit of a cultural difference between American business culture and British business culture. And I'll give a short anecdote. But in American business culture, when you ask someone, how are you? They always say, fine, how are you? And if you want to express something, maybe you're not fine, it's in the tone of your voice. You could say, Fine, thank you. That's it. There's no details added to express what's happening in your life. And then I had a colleague who went to the UK and asked their office mate, their new coworkers, how are you? And you know what this crazy office worker did? Oh, he really answered. He's like, well, I got up late today, so that was hard. And then the car wouldn't start, and he's going on and on. And my friend is thinking, like, what are you doing? I don't care. I don't know you well enough. Why are you exposing your life to me? And, there's a real difference in culture there. So that's American to British. And I think that a lot of other cultures have this British mindset, which is you're asking me, I'm not telling you my personal hopes and wishes, but I am going to truly answer the question. And that's not the case in most business English settings, especially not American. In business English, we don't really do any touching. Handshake is fine. It's also not necessary. Kissing is okay if it's in a culture where there are cheek kisses. In the best case scenario, no touching. Truly the best case. Like you're sort of meeting in a way where it's not awkward to just like say, hello, nice to meet you. But then, if someone starts shaking hands, then everybody will shake hands and it's totally normal. But otherwise, the business culture in English speaking environments is not tactile. Yeah, I see Najwa saying it's cultural. Exactly. You see my point that when we're talking business English, we're not just talking language, we are also talking culture. Abdullah saying a head nod would be enough. Exactly. A head nod, a smile. We are very smiley and we're not very touchy. It is really frowned upon in business English to speak negatively. And I will tell you about basically two reasons. So, and this is negatively about other people. So about your previous employer, about the previous place you worked, about where you went to university. So in general, in English, we tend to be fairly optimistic. Again, I'm giving you a slightly more American version than a British version, but still, compared to a lot of cultures, even the Brits are slightly more optimistic in terms of what we share. We are more likely to share positive things. We're more likely to brag, and we're not heavy complainers. And we don't tolerate complaining very, very well. We don't like it. We look down upon it. Someone who's complaining, we blame them, that they have a negative attitude, that they're not working to improve their circumstances. It is not a bonding opportunity. I will compare this to the French culture where complaining is totally accepted in the office. And in some ways, that is the bonding, is to share a complaint. That's just not the case in business English. If you've had a negative experience, you can share about it in a quick and short way, but nobody's interested in hearing you talk about it at length. That's the first example. The next one is about interviews. If you're interviewing for a job in English, saying anything negative about your past employer, or even negative about anything in your resume, including your education, is considered bad taste. Like inappropriate, not polite, sort of like something we would call frowned upon. When we say something is frowned upon, it means it's not polite and there's an awkward sense around it, okay? So this is something that you do not see in business communication in English. Even if we do want to complain, we will do it in a very hidden way. Like in an email, we will make it very passive aggressive so that we're not outright complaining. All right, we don't use informal language. I think that much we've already touched on. So we're not using texting language. The abbreviations we use are business specific abbreviations only. Then there's about being too direct or abrasive, which I think if the ones attending this webinar are Algerian, you don't have to worry about, because I think of the Algerian culture as very kind and indirect, and I've never come across someone who goes for over directness in English, but it's good to be aware of that there is, compared to general English, there's just more, again, passive and also passive aggressive rather than overtly aggressive. If you're upset about something, if you want to complain, if you're frustrated, that those emotions do not come out at the front of a business meeting. And then also not overwhelming people with information is considered best practice in business English. So kind of giving only as much as is necessary until you get follow-up questions. Forget to listen. Well, this is good advice for life, I think, but especially in a business English context. We have a lot of jokes, I would say, maybe complaints about people who talk and talk and talk and talk and aren't able to stop and listen to others, asking questions and then not even waiting to hear the answer. And then don't skip formalities. So especially in written communication, formalities include that first sentence. I hope this finds you well. It includes having a sign-off word or phrase, best regards, sincerely, and things like in my example in the beginning about spelling my full name instead of using my initials. So even though we're not a hyper-formal language, we do have our formalities and we do notice when someone isn't using them. All right, I see I have some questions. So Iman is saying, what do you mean by passive aggressive? Passive aggressive is when we want to say something, but we want to do it indirectly. So a passive aggressive, I'll do an email as an example. So if I send an email to someone and they respond back with a question, but in my email, I had the answer. So maybe I said, maybe I'm emailing someone about this webinar. I say the webinar will be on Zoom. They respond to me and they say, so why are you using Google Meet instead of Zoom? I'm annoyed. I didn't say I'm using Google Meet. I said I'm using Zoom. But in business English, we don't say directly, hey, I didn't say that. You were wrong. We couch our, in this, I mean, we use the word aggression. It's not always like crazy aggressive, but it's something I'm annoyed about or something I'm frustrated about. I will put it in a phrase that pretends to be polite. So I will say, you know, I'm laughing at trying to come up with the passive aggressive phrase like, I'm not quite sure where you see Google Meet, comma, I believe Zoom is the only one mentioned. I'm not quite sure where. It's a very indirect way of correcting someone. Another way, in my mind, even that's too correct. Another more indirect way would go, perhaps I wasn't quite clear enough. Perhaps I wasn't quite clear enough. The webinar will be on Zoom. Don't worry, exclamation point. Don't worry, smile. We love to put a smile and an exclamation point at the end of something that's passive aggressive. Yeah, Abdullah's saying it sounds aggressive. Yeah. Well, oh, it sounds more aggressive. Maybe the second one by saying, perhaps I haven't been clear. Yeah, these are both corrective in nature, but we don't allow ourselves in business English, it's not appropriate to directly correct someone. So we have these passive aggressive phrases. All right, abrasive, Smain's asking abrasive. Abrasive is a word for when something is offensive. It's another way of saying offensive. It will offend you. All right, let's continue. So we're actually probably not going to finish. I'm seeing we have 25 minutes left. We just went over business English, but I'm happy to see the discussion in the chat. I'm happy to get your questions. We have business soft skills and we have networking. So if we don't get all the way through everything, we'll add networking to next Wednesday. So business soft skills. What do I mean when I say business soft skills? What comes to mind for you? Tell me in the chat, please. Communication, cool. Negotiations, good. Leadership, effective communication, time management, confidence, collaboration, public speaking, literacy, collaboration, relationships, bargaining, stress management, convincing, financial literacy. Cool. Awesome. Critical thinking, teamwork, public speaking. All right, more and more are coming in. Thank you so much. Oops. Wait. It is the list. I thought it was my slide starting networking. All right, this is the list we have put together, but it is not exhaustive. When we are in a business environment, we are using much more than just language. And when we're mastering business English, it is most helpful to master it along with a related soft skill. So these are the skills that we've designed the course around. We have networking. Of course, you need language to network. You need the right vocabulary, the right jargon, the right tone, etc. But the skill goes beyond language. It also involves people skills. It involves confidence. It involves understanding expectations in a networking environment in English. Great. Then we have teamwork and collaboration. So I saw that a few times. Thank you for that. So again, these are things that are not explicitly related to language, but when we are in a business English environment, there are some expectations around how teamwork happens, how collaboration happens, and certain language we can use while we are doing it. Then we have pitching. Who can tell me what pitching means? What does it mean to pitch? And I'm not talking about baseball, because baseball, this is where the word comes from. Baseball, you have the pitcher, the person who holds the ball, winds all the way back, pitches the ball. What do we mean when we say pitch in a business context? Presenting new ideas, giving a detail about something, the overall idea. I'm glad I asked. Working under pressure, I see some very different concepts. Give me, if you're not sure about what it means, maybe you know in what context we use it. When do you hear the word pitching? Who does pitching? Does every business pitch something? Does every person pitch something? In what context do we hear about pitching? I see sales, marketing, sales associates, thinking outside of the box, proposal. Okay, I like the word proposal. Okay, convincing board members. Okay, Mohammed saying investing opportunities. Jamila says seeking for funding. Thank you. Warat Rufeda says startups. This is what I was trying to get out of the chat. Pitching is a word that we are hearing more and more and more because it is all about entrepreneurship. When you pitch an idea to someone, you are usually looking for funding. If you're not looking for funding, you're looking for something. I am presenting a proposal and I need something from the person who is in my audience. So it's not just a presentation to share. It is a presentation to ask, please fund my new business. And I'll tell you why. And me telling you why, this is the pitch. I'm pitching to you, I'm pitching. And at the end, I'm gonna ask for money, or I'm gonna ask for free services, or I'm gonna ask for you to be on my board of directors or be my mentor. Okay, so a pitch is a presentation with a request. And you're gonna find this in entrepreneurship or in the startup world. Cool. And it does come directly, it's from the sport of baseball. It's a sports metaphor because the person who's throwing the ball, they're putting it out there to see who's going to catch. And the one who's catching is the one who will fund you, who believes in you, who supports you. So Rose is asking, so pitching means starting a business? No, pitching means proposing. It means really asking for support, usually related to a new business. So you're asking for funding for your business. You're asking for someone to mentor you for your business. You're asking someone to agree or believe in your idea. All right. Oh, Mohammed, an elevator pitch can be the most stressful thing one might ever engage in. Yeah, elevator pitch, slightly different, but similar in that it is all about presenting something in hopes of getting something out of it, getting a connection, getting an interview. Great. Abdullah says Dragon's Den, Shark Tank. Thank you. Thank you. These are the examples I needed. If you don't know what Shark Tank is or Dragon's Den, go look them up. There are some fun episodes. Soft skills, we also have conflict resolution. We're going to go over conflict resolution in English. It might end up being a lesson more about conflict resolution in any language, but we'll add some English specific vocabulary and English cultural sort of workplace culture around conflict resolution. And then leadership, which is something that's extremely central when you're talking about business English, because the business English culture trains leaders, especially I would say in our consulting agencies, in our finance agencies, and in entrepreneurship, there's a real focus on incorporating or incubating leadership skills into employees. So we will talk about all of these things. And as I said, these are not all the soft skills. So you also sent me some great soft skills, but these are the ones that we are going to be tackling together. Why is it important to understand business soft skills and business English? Well, mostly we need to know that business English is not just vocabulary, which I feel like I've been saying a million times so far. And I hope that that has come across. Culture, culture, culture. An English-speaking workplace has its own culture, has its own rules, has its own etiquette. All right? And they're often specific. So as much as I would love to represent the full English-speaking world, you're going to find slightly different culture in different countries. You're going to find slightly different culture within a country in different regions of that country. And you're going to find different culture even specific to industries. So working in sales, no matter what country or language, is going to have a different work culture than working in finance and administration. I can just promise you that from having worked in a lot of different countries and different industries, that there's a different attitude and different communication styles if you're on the sales team than really if you're anywhere else. So what I'm going to be talking to you about in the presentation for the next 6 weeks, you will have to remember my background, because I will be giving you as broad information as I can. And also I have my bias. My bias is America, because I am American. So I'm always going to know a little bit more about the American workplace. My bias is also the Northeast region. So I'm from Boston. That's also very close to New York. So I'm very familiar with industries that are common in these cities. We're talking about finance, we're talking consulting, we're talking education, we're talking medical. I think that these lessons will continue into other industries, or will carry you into other industries, but it's just helpful to know that anytime you're talking about culture, the background of the person talking to you will influence the information that you get. This is also my way of covering myself. If after you leave this class and you walk into an English-speaking company, you find something not like what you thought, you can say, well, it's a different industry. I'm not working in a hospital in Boston. Although I hope these lessons will help you no matter where you take your business English. All right. These are the types of things that can be different from workplace to workplace. Transactional language, so preferences on how requests are made, preferences on how feedback is given, preferences on how collaboration happens. Anything transactional between staff members in a company, that can be very specific. Written etiquette, how the company writes emails. What are the sign-offs that they use, whether they like to use email or WhatsApp or Slack or GChat is also there for communication preferences. Do they like to call on the phone, or do they like to just use written? Do they want everything written, or do they prefer in-person meetings? All right. So now we have arrived at networking. I see Mohammed saying, is emotional intelligence considered a soft skill? So soft skill is kind of a broad term. I personally would not consider emotional intelligence a soft skill, because I think skill and intelligence are kind of synonyms. We're both talking about categories of expertise. And so I would think of soft skills as sort of behaviors, like learned behaviors that you can practice and hone, that are very explicitly connected to your personhood, your personality, and your background. But you know what? If you can make me a good argument for including it, then maybe I will change my mind. All right, networking. What is networking? We'll do as much as we can, and then we'll move the rest of networking to next week. I have networking is the exchange of information and ideas among people with a common profession or special interest, often in an informal social setting. It's funny, when I read long definitions like this of networking, it makes it sound so technical. You know, like anytime we define what is an informal situation, it suddenly makes that situation sound very specific. like, oh, maybe that wasn't networking over there because did we have a special interest? Was the social setting appropriately informal? So I like to go for just super simple definitions. And I liked the one that someone put down here, which is professional socializing. Professional socializing. Thank you, Abdullah. That's a fun one. I've never seen that before. Professional socializing. And then also creating connections with people. All right. Usually in order to expand your professional network. So maybe in the future, knowing the person that you've met will help you. You don't need something from them immediately. It's not like they're offering you a job. It's not like they're trying to work with you, but you get to know them, and who knows, maybe in a year from now, you'll have a reason to call them up and work with them. So it really is about socializing and building relationships. Yep, Shiraz says it's building relationships with people in a field you are in or you want to break into. Totally. It's basically making new, I see connaissance. I see a little French word going on in here, noted. Making new connections that could bring you value. Very cool. Waret says, they say your network is your net worth. They say your network is your net worth, saying that who you know is so valuable to your career that it is equal to what is your overall net worth. How much money are you worth? How valuable are you? All right, great. So, oh, tell me in the chat. You already told me in the chat. Here's a slide to say what is networking and what networking is not. So networking, we're going to start on the right side. Networking is making relationships with professionals with shared interests. So you work in the same industry. It could be something where you have decided to sign up for the same after work where all the marketing professionals are. I don't know why I'm really on marketing tonight, but there's a reason you're in the same place, okay? And then it's just about professionals. The thing is, well, sorry, I said just about. It's an interaction between professionals. But I want to emphasize that you can network before you have started your career. But the reason that you are, not the reason, maybe the mindset that you have when you're in this setting is as a professional. So you can say, I'm still a student, but I want to go to this networking event. And I'm going to let people know what I do at school, what is my research topic, and what do I hope to do my thesis on. Okay, so you're still presenting yourself in a very professional light. Oh, sorry. Okay. The informal social setting part, I don't want you to get too attached to, because you can also do networking in a more formal setting. Usually there will be an opportunity in the middle of a formal event where people are standing up. It could be a coffee break. It could be an intentional networking thing. It could just be that you've arrived early. Okay, so don't think to yourself networking can only happen in a coffee shop or only happen in a restaurant where you run into someone. It can happen in a formal event, but the moment that you're connecting with someone is not a structured interaction. It's not someone saying, you know, now go and like collaborate and make a presentation with someone. That's not networking. That's working on a task together. Networking means there's not a lot of guidelines and you're really talking about yourself and asking questions about the person in front of you. Networking is not family and friends giving you jobs. So I think a lot of people will think that networking is basically marifa, like it's nepotism. That's the word for marifa in English. Like it just means that I go and I meet my friend's friend who has a position open. That's not networking, because you're not actually getting to know someone with no transaction. That's a transaction. Networking is non-transactional. Maybe I'm hoping for a transaction at the end of the day. I'm hoping that eventually I'll get a benefit from this person. I can think that way. Nothing wrong with thinking that way. But the moment you're meeting someone, you're not getting anything out of it besides the relationship. Networking is also not sending resumes. And I also don't advise that you network with a resume, because the whole point of networking is building a relationship. In order to build a relationship, you need some kind of mutual interest in the relationship. I have to want to have a connection with you, and you have to want a connection with me. So just like making friends, there's a mutuality to it. We both need to think, hey, this person's kind of nice. I'd like to stay in touch with them. When you pull out a resume and hand it to someone else, it sort of negates the idea that you're genuinely interested in that person. You've now changed the conversation into a more transactional one. So networking is not for sending resumes, and it really is not the right environment for bringing out your resume either. Networking for the same reason as not bringing out your resume, it's also not asking for job interviews or asking, are there openings at your company? Really, if there's one thing I can encourage you to take away from this, it's that networking should not feel like you're asking anything. You can ask later. So you meet them, you connect with them on LinkedIn, and then you shoot them a message an hour later. It's so great to meet you. I'd actually love to work at your company if you ever hear of anything. That's fine. But in that first connection, it is not the moment to ask. It's also not so casual. It's not flirting. It's not making a regular friendship. It's not talking about your personal life. You're still in a business English setting, and you'll be engaging as a professional with them as a professional. So that responsibility is on both people. You're presenting yourself professionally, you're talking about your background in a professional way, and so should they. So if they start sharing personal details with you or taking it in a direction that just does not feel like a professional conversation, that's not a networking conversation anymore, even if you kept it professional. So that's the moment when you would say, okay, I'm not interested, because I'm here to network. I'm here to build my professional relationship. Yes, nepotism is the word you're looking for. Thank you to Mohammed and Hossein for answering for me. Mohammed is saying in Algeria, everyone thinks networking is marifa. Yes, exactly. And it's very frustrating for me because I try to say again and again that building a professional network is very different and very important for your career. And I hate to think that people will throw away the whole thing thinking it's just about nepotism. Cool. Who can network? So because we're almost out of time, I'm just going to go straight to my answer instead of asking for you to play, in part because it's a trick question. Everyone can network. There's two things to know. Everybody is able to network, including students. You can't network if you're in high school. You can't network if you're a child. Maybe your first year of university, there's not much point because you're very far from your career. Those relationships would take years. And also, since networking is mutual, the person has to have an interest in you as well. And someone who's working is not necessarily going to see a value of a connection with a young student. But as soon as you reach, let's say, 1 year from graduation, or if you start interning while you're working at university, you have a part-time job, so you're already in the workforce. At this point, you absolutely can start networking. And so I said everyone because the exceptions are really very few. Even if you're unemployed, even if you're not looking for work right now and you're unemployed, you're on a sabbatical, there's no reason why you can't build up your professional relationships. And then we are all responsible. So we're all able to network, and we're also all responsible for building our own network. Nobody can build your network for you. In fact, that is nepotism, is someone using their network for your benefit. You are responsible for building your network, for finding those people that you connect with really in a human to human level. I like this person. I'm interested in the work that they do. I would enjoy a coffee. I would enjoy having lunch with them. That's going to be the basis of your professional network, much more than sitting and saying, well, my friend knows some people, and so I'll go to lunch with them. That's not going to create a sustained network around you as you advance in your career. Why is it important to network? I'm going to just go through 3 of these before we have to wrap up, and then maybe answer some remaining questions in the chat. So access to opportunities. I'm telling you 2 things, and you may say to me, Ariella, these are conflicting. And I realize that they sound like they are in opposition. I'm telling you that networking is non-transactional, and then I'm also telling you that networking can lead to more opportunities. I know they sound like they're opposites, but they are actually both true. Creating a relationship with someone has to actually be founded on an interest in being in touch. You have to like each other. You have to have an amount of respect for each other. You have to you have to have interesting things to talk about. This is true for anyone in your life, whether it's your friends or whether it's a professional connection. the moment that you're making that connection, you can't ask for things because that's not how friendships or relationships work. If I go up to someone and I want to be friends with them and then I ask them immediately, but will you give me your lunch if I'm your friend? They will realize we're not talking about friendship. This is just a trade and there's no real relationship founded. And then when the relationship has founded, even if it is only at its, base level. So we met an hour ago. Well, maybe that's too short. Maybe we met last week. And then we want to follow up with them about an opportunity that they're somehow connected to. There is a way to do that relatively quickly. I mean, it's different, right? If you're asking them to connect you with their friend, that takes time because we only connect the people we trust with our network. But if you're asking them about an opening at their company and saying, hey, I applied to this job, like I want to apply to this job, what should I put in my application letter? Or I want to apply to this job, or I already submitted, if you could flag it for the HR manager, something like that. But the truth of the matter is the longer your connections, the greater the opportunity is to, I was going to say use them, which maybe sounds negative, but truly the network goes in both directions. So your connection might contact you if there's something in your issue area that they want help with, and you also can contact them. So building the network early matters so that you have these long-standing relationships that you can then reach out to. It will also help you learn from other experiences, especially if you are earlier on in your career. Building a network with entry-level employees. Let's say I'm in my last year of university and I meet people who are in their first year of work. I can ask them, what was the biggest mistake that you made? I can ask them to send me their resume so I can see what resumes look like and I can model mine after theirs. I can ask them their opinion about their first job and what they wish they did differently. So there's a learning opportunity there that is not at all about getting hired or getting a personal handout. And then there's building credibility and visibility. So the more people know you, the more they can vouch for you. Oh, this person's normal. They're, legitimate. I see them at these events. I have good conversations with them. There is visibility on things like LinkedIn. You can talk about networking. You can connect with people. It will help your entire profile look more attractive to future partners or future employers. All right, let me look at some questions and then we will close out. Rose is asking, are there any good ways to network? Rosa, there are so many good ways to network, and those are my slides I didn't get to, so come back next Wednesday. We will begin with that. Mohammed is sending me an argument for emotional intelligence. Thank you very much. I'm gonna think about it and come back next week. Fatima says, when we talk about LinkedIn networking, but social media followers, yes. Well, on social media, you don't know necessarily the people who are following you. It's unidirectional. They follow you, you don't follow them. On LinkedIn, you both connect. If someone gets to see your profile, you are automatically connected to their profile. There is zero hierarchy. This is why we have a difference between followers and LinkedIn connections. I mean, I would say the connections on LinkedIn are not necessarily the size of your network. I have people that I'm connected to on LinkedIn I've never met before because I'm happy to be connected. I'm happy to have people connect to me online, but these are not people that I could contact if I needed something or if I had a question about something. So I would hesitate to say that your LinkedIn network is equal to your real network. Jamila, can we network with the participants in this course, knowing their backgrounds in different fields? I love this idea. So in the presentation that we didn't get to, I was going to have you guys come on the microphone and practice networking. So we'll do that next week. And maybe we can set up, I don't know, maybe a LinkedIn group or something. I'll look into it, but that sounds really fun. A place where we can all be connected. Hayat, can we get today's presentation in PDF format? So usually we don't give them in PDF because they're recorded and put on YouTube forever. So that is how this one will be available. Let me think about this LinkedIn group idea. I think it is awesome and super relevant to the course. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you for putting up with the little dog noises here and there. She was mostly behaved. And I'm excited to see you next week. So next week, normally the plan is to talk about how to present yourself. both like speaking orally as well as in writing, but we're going to add networking into it. So it will be networking and presenting yourself. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next Wednesday at 6:30. Have a good night.